Happy Halloween, everybody! It is that time of year when a new VHS drops, and just over a year after VHS99 dropped on Shudder, and provided us with, honestly, some of the best segments in the whole VHS franchise, we have to ask with new segments and a whole new movie, but how good of a film is VHS99? Well, with a whole bunch of new segments and a whole batch of new directors, including musician and voice actor Flying Lotus.
Hey, what up, y'all? I don't know how I got on this beach or where I am really, but I'm about to play some new tracks I've been working on.
Yeah, Flylo is a part of this, but what can we expect from the VHS franchise that we haven't seen before? As this film series approaches its 10th year, we do really want to see how the whole thing has evolved. What can we expect that's new? What can we expect that's a little bit old? But I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible. I'll be judging VHS99 much as the other previous segments based on four main criteria. Or criterion. Four individual pieces of criteria. First, spooks. How fun and scary is this? Second, authenticity. How much does it feel like it's from the era? How 1999 does it actually feel? Execution. How well is the concept handled and what does the director bring to the table? And then finally, creativity. How original is this concept and how is it represented? Overall, I think VHS99 is a very, very good entry in the series. Later on, I'll talk about where this film ranks and where the segments themselves rank in this actual film, but let's just jump right into it with the first segment, Shredders. Shredders is a pure late 90s nostalgia piece through and through. It's wrapped up in a dirty, grungy shirt, and it's quite fun. I will admit I did have a lot of fun with Shredders. The story follows a pop-punk group called Rack as they investigate the remains of an art collective known as the Colony Underground, a place where a band played their last show and died in the remains of a fire. When the band returns to punish the disrespectful mall rats, shit goes off the rails. Inspired by incidents such as the Station nightclub incident and the Happy Land fires, Shredders puts together a tight story with a simple cast, but doesn't really let up until its final moments to reveal what it's actually about. Honestly, Shredders feels as though it might have been a bit better in VHS94, but it actually makes up for Bone Storm. While still keeping the sentiment and being deeply shitty humans, the skate aesthetic is incredible. The time period takes center stage and reminds me of the work of Spike Jonze and John Miner before they became big directors. Quick cuts, exaggerated faces, and frankly just being bad at skateboarding and music, but with an era-specific tone and feel. I really, really liked that they feel like they could play their own music, and it wasn't exactly, out of place for 1999. There's a great intro, and honestly, it kind of helps set that we're going to be a little bit goofy and we're going to be a little bit funny in this one, and I really like it. It never really overstays its welcome, and I get a breakdown of what these kind of poses are doing in this place when they finally get to it. Also, the band doesn't suck at all. I want to make that very, very clear. I'm not a huge fan of pop punk, but it's up there with like fake bands like Josie and the Pussycats from 2001 and Coyote Shivers from Empire Records. The band are most likely posers trying to do this thing and they get way out of their depth, but it looks like they know how to play music and it doesn't feel as though they, are really, really lazy about it showing it on screen. When things do get spooky and scary, the creature effects are good, but not amazing. It is the one thing that I feel like it kind of lets me down. One of the main negatives I have is that the story is pretty much cut and dry, both in terms of the horror and stuff that we've already seen in the VHS series. Vengeful spirits, gory ghouls, returning to enact justice, that kind of thing. It's good. I don't love it, but it is pretty good. The ending comes, honestly, a bit too quickly and somewhat feels unresolved. It could have been a little bit more gory on screen. And there's just kind of moments that I'm like, oh, I guess that's what ghouls do? Again, it doesn't really sort of give us too much backstory, but it doesn't sort of take away from the scariness of the situation. It might be the weakest segment in the whole film, but at least it's at the start and you kind of get it out of the way right away. It sets a great gory tone and kind of a goofy atmosphere, and I give Shredders a 3 out of 5. With that, we move on to Suicide Bid. Suicide Bid is fairly straightforward, and I really, really like this segment. Lily is a sorority applicant who joins a sorority doing a suicide bid, an attempted sorority pledge that, if refuted or lost, means that you just don't get to go into other sororities. I don't know, Americans are weird with this whole thing. Before her attempt, Lily meets up with a group of sorority girls who tell her the pledge rules, and then they tell her the legend of Guillotine. Guillotine being a sorority girl who spent the night in a coffin and then died, and apparently it happened 20 years ago tonight. Ooh, spooky. Look, I think that overall, yes, this segment is a little bit cliche, but I really do like it. The only thing that really lets it down is a tiny bit of the acting. And I don't mean that from the main girl. The girl who plays Lily is fucking amazing. I'm gonna fuck up this name, but Alexia Ioannidis is awesome. I do have to say, at no point do I believe that these sorority girls ever really give a shit about the legend or would actually shovel 6 feet of dirt, but that's not the point. They just need to set up the story, provide the stakes, and just kind of get everything in there. Like, they feel like it's 50-50 the craft and 50-50 teaching Miss Tingle, but honestly, 100% it's its own story, it's VHS. I really appreciate the little moments that make Lily really, really human, like equally cruel but innocent, but like also really, really wanting this at the same time. She's given very, very little in the script, but she nails it by the time that she has to get into the coffin. Again, we've seen this story before, college students' coffin, sorority pledges, it goes alright, but once Lily gets in that coffin, I feel all bets are fucking off. Putting the camera in there, but also seeing the two different perspectives outside the coffin, I really, really love that. It keeps the story chugging along, but it doesn't feel like a second is wasted, and it's never using like extra editing or like anything else that raises the stakes. They try to keep it as natural before the supernatural happens. And now, Johannes Roberts, who's directed some great horror flicks before, like 47 Meters Down and the recent Resident Evil film, throws everything into this and it works perfectly. I absolutely love the ending. I'm not going to spoil this. It is an absolute home run. It actually kind of reminded me a lot of The Empty Wake from 1994, but with a little less atmosphere. I really love this one a lot. The terror comes more from, you know, being in the coffin and kind of like getting into your primal fears rather than anything really supernatural. And it's just such a great short. Feels like a Stephen King story. Shout out to the whole team for making this absolutely terrifying and claustrophobic at every single moment. Love that ending. Not going to spoil how it ends, but fuck, this rules so much. I just want to watch how they made every scene of this. Like, it's so good. I really love it. It's so, I loved Suicide Bid so much. It's 4.5 out of 5 for this one. Now on to Ozzy's Dungeon, a horror short by Flying Lotus, set as a parody of kids' game shows Gas and Double Dare, and for Australians, Amazing, and it stars Trevor from GTA 5. What a fucking amazing combination of concepts, but how is the execution? Overall, the story follows Donna down this very, very dark revenge tale about a family who goes on one of these game shows, specifically Ozzy's Dungeon. Fictional, but kind of, it nails the authenticity. I'll talk more about that later on, but it really, really just seeps through being so 1990s. Honestly, I just have to talk about the acting here. The acting and the casting in this is so good. Sonia Eddy and Stephen Ogg steal the whole show in their respective roles. Both deeply underutilized character actors who we now know play severe psychopaths and also very, very sympathetic characters in their own right. The writing and acting in this is perfect. Nothing feels out of place. Nothing feels like it's just added in because it's a 90s thing. It feels natural in every portion of this segment. I really appreciate everyone who commits to the story so hard, no matter how weird it gets. In terms of authenticity and era-specific cuts and camera movements, especially in the dungeon segments, I love it to pieces. The whole 90s obsession with kids and gross stuff is just so accurate. I can't even begin to describe it. Like, I remember watching these shows so much as a kid and just wishing I could be on it week after week, even though, honestly, it was embarrassing and kind of messed up for the kids and the schools and the parents and whoever was making them do this kind of stuff. I mean, this moment alone...
What do you wish for?
I want to be the most famous and best basketball player ever in the world. You don't want to get dunked on, fool.
Is the perfect pitch for the entire segment thematically. My only negatives here is that the ending just feels a little bit drawn out and maybe a little bit confusing. I might have to watch it again to get more of the symbolism. And as much as I love Flying Lotus and the music that he creates, I just didn't feel like it was era specific. I checked the credits afterwards and all of the music is made by Flying Lotus and I really, really liked it, but it just didn't feel like it was late 90s or even possibly early 2000s. Maybe early 2000s IDM, but it just didn't feel like it fit. I would genuinely love if there was like a VHS soundtrack compilation, because there's a lot of great music in this series and in the actual scores themselves, but a man can dream, and really it's my only thing I can say negatively about this segment. Overall, Ozzy's Dungeon could have been uploaded to YouTube real late at night as a creepypasta or an analog horror piece, and you can kind of just pick through the bits and pieces that you like, but honestly, I like this. I like this a lot. I hope Flying Lotus gets to direct and make more cool stuff. In fact, an entire anthology series written and directed by the man could be fucking cool. Zoe Cooper, I'm not quite sure of their contributions, but knowing that they've written and made other shorts definitely sort of helped put structure around this. It's gory, it's gross, it's fun, and it felt like Flying Lotus all the way through. Did it feel like it was a part of VHS? Yes and no, but look, I think one day, maybe just give Flying Lotus their own movie on Shudder. maybe. Just putting that out there. Just putting that out there. Could possibly happen. Warp Records could help produce it. Drop a soundtrack. Put it on vinyl. Something like that. Anyway, it's a 3.5 out of 5 for me. So I feel like Gawkers, as a structure or as a piece of the VHS film franchise, is something they should have done a long time ago, but they just haven't, and it's kind of weird. I have the least to say about this one, but I loved this one the most. Gawkers, again, this is just a light spoiler, but it is a part of the whole wraparound story that is confusing at first, but again, tonally works fantastic. Gawkers starts off feeling like a bit more of a fun version of Bone Storm. I know I keep going back to this, but I just don't want to compare it to Jackass or like skating videos of the era, but Gawkers is so great. It is so cool, and for the most part, it's just teens hanging out, being dipshits. I'll be honest about that. One of them is prepping for Y2K, one of them is obsessed with their neighbor, one of them is just excited about getting, like, just going to Woodstock 99, I think that's a portion of it, and they just play pranks on each other, and then they make fun of one of their brothers, Brady. And then fate intervenes when their neighbor asks Brady to install a webcam. And look, so far, so American Pie, but once Brady has that webcam installed, things take a turn for the fucked up, and I'm not going to spoil at all, but the foreshadowing and the setups are incredible. It is so well written and feels so realistic, and I really, really do love it. The effects and the ending are amazing, and honestly, it's a perfect companion piece to VHS 1's opener, Amateur Night. I think people are really going to love the shit out of this one. They're going to talk about this one in the same way they talked about The Empty Wake and Ratman from 1994. In terms of authenticity alone, the fashions, the car, the Mac that gets delivered about halfway through this segment, the references, the camera, the casual misogyny, they nailed it all. It feels like 1999. It feels like a VHS film. It feels good to watch this one. I really love this segment through and through. The lead up is a bit long, and maybe some people might count that as a negative, but it just gently sets up all the pieces to get you where you need to be. I have so little to say about this. I loved it. Straight up 5 out of 5. Stone cold brilliant segment. Here we go, last one. Now, as the last segment, I feel like To Hell and Back is at a detriment coming after one that I really, really loved. To Hell and Back tells you exactly what it is from the first minute, and honestly, I like it, but I don't love it. To explain the story would give away too much, but it's akin to a game of Dungeons & Dragons where you have to take your players to a fiery realm and then come back again. It's complete with creepy monsters and an NPC with a silly voice guiding those characters. Again, like I said from the start, it's goofy, it's fun. This one's really, really well done. I just wasn't feeling it. I felt like it is possibly the weakest segment out of the whole story, and while it didn't really gel with the vibe of it, I think thematically it still fits, and it's still a great short. The acting is a bit mixed in some places, but I think to have an actor say, "Our Lord Ukabon," with a straight face and just keep acting and you believe it, I think it's fantastic. The MVP here is actually Melanie Stone, and I'm going to try and show as little of Melanie as possible, but she is fantastic as Mabel. She just nails every single moment. She just never drops a hint that she's from any kind of earthly realm. Like, she's lived here forever. The biggest praise that I can give is the visual effects and creature effects, and they are phenomenal. I love them to pieces. Reminds me a lot of the great 80s and 90s creature effects from K&B Effects and a lot of the great stuff that they did for Wes Craven. I really love these like crazy looking bear traps as well. The production design is really, really great here. Again, I could gush for probably another half an hour about why I really like this segment, but I have to say, I didn't really love it because cults are such a well done trope in the VHS series. I just wish it was like a little bit different. I feel like, look, the change of space and time is great, but there were a few parts where I kind of couldn't take myself out of the fact that they clearly just shot this, you know, out near a canyon real late at night. It doesn't feel like it was shot during the 90s. I know that the camera's quite high quality. That's why they've hired these guys, the guys who play Troy and Nate, and they do quite well, and they're quite funny, and they go back and forth, but it just doesn't feel like a 90s piece. It's too clean. There's not enough grain in it. There are like a few references to 90s stuff like Qui-Gon and Pokemon, and that's kind of cute, but look, not my favorite segment, but a well-done segment overall. To Hell and Back exists as a fun little adventure through the gates of hell and obviously back again, and I think it's a solid 3 out of 5 for me. What would have been awesome, and what I guess I would suggest for a VHS down the line, is we have so many cults in the VHS universe. Why not create, like, that they're all the same cult? Like, the cult from the end of 31-10-98 segment is the same one that's also in Safe Haven, but it's a different version of them in a different country. Like, they're the Canadian version, and the Safe Haven one's the Indonesian version. I don't know. Anyway, that's just an idea. The point is, I really liked VHS99. It was definitely better than Viral, maybe better than One, but definitely in the top 3 or 4 of all of the VHS films. There was very rarely a dud moment, and it went by so quickly. I was never checking my watch, never checking the time. I just had a lot of fun, really, and that's what these films are really great for at the end of the day. Just something to pop on during Halloween and have a lot of fun. I really want to thank Shudder for producing these films. The fact that VHS85 is coming literally next year is crazy, and look at the lineup on this. That's insane to me. Anyway, with VHS99, this is the last thing I'll say, is I had a lot of fun, and I thought it was goofy, and I thought it was great. It's a solid 7.5 out of 10, and I'm going to update this on my letterboxd. You can obviously berate me in the comments there if you would like to do that. Finally, if I had to rank the segments, it would probably go from bottom to top to Hell and Back, Shredders, Ozzy's Dungeon, Suicide Bid, and then Gawkers, number 1, with a bullet. But where do they end up on the full list? Well, I guess you'll have to subscribe and find out next year with a whole new list when VHS85 gets released. That's right, come back at the end of next year. I'll have a whole new updated list. But I want to thank everybody for watching the ranked list, which now obviously becomes quite obsolete, but I still am glad people watched it. I really, really appreciate it. We got to 100,000 views in the span of a month. That's crazy. That doesn't happen to me at all. If you want to support me, do support me on Patreon. That would be cool. I've got another Halloween video that you can also check out as well, which is just like a little fan edit. Especially if you're a big fan of horror movies, you're going to love the hell out of that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Enjoy your Halloween. Stay safe and stay spooky.